Alright, so welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we are talking about the future of magazines. But before I continue, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Fashion Roadman for all your fashion news and all your fashion information. So fashion magazines, things that were once seen as fashion bibles for the jet set upper class of society and the society's elite, to fashion magazines becoming sort of this wannabe celebrity circle jerking kind of like promotional book, basically, is the best way I can describe most fashion magazines in this current day. And I feel like magazines have gone from a time where the journalism was so good and so constructive and so forward thinking, and the journalism has transitioned from that to, hi guys, this is what Nicki Minaj wore in the last catwalk show or whatever no one cares about. And it's almost like magazines have undermined their consumers and the intelligence of their consumers. I mean, my YouTube channel is testament to the fact that young people are interested in fashion further than just like, oh, let's see what celebrities are wearing or stuff like that. And in pursuit of trying to appeal to Gen Zers and millennials, I think a lot of fashion magazines have missed the mark and kind of watered down the value of their magazines, especially in terms of the journalistic value, which is quite sad to say the least. On the finance side, I have spoken about how magazines earn their money, especially print magazines, but I'll talk about it again. Most magazines earn majority of their money, especially print magazines, from the sales of the print magazine and advertisements. So every time you open a magazine and you see a massive page that is just a Gucci campaign or a Prada campaign or some beauty brand, some makeup brand, they have probably paid tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, sometimes even millions, depending on how big the publication is. If it's a publication like Vogue, especially Vogue American Vogue, then definitely in the millions. They've paid to kind of have that advertisement space in the magazine. And what this has meant is that a lot of journalism isn't very objective anymore, because there's too much at stake when it comes to these fashion magazines in terms of what they could lose. And that's why these magazines just dilly-dally, and instead of telling me what their real thoughts about a collection are, they're just gonna beat around the bush and just circle around the main point and just say, yeah, this collection was really great. I love the details. There was fur coats. We also saw silk jackets that were red, and it's like, we can all see that. You're the journalist. Like, tell us a bit more about the clothing. But of course they can't, because they're under obligation not to say negative things about the brand, because if they do, then they could lose a lot of money on behalf of like their publication, for example. So journalists are under too much pressure not to write in a way that's very divisive, even if it's in a very genuine and truthful way. And it's really a shame, because when I first got into fashion, I was reading books and articles by this, what I refer to as like the golden era of fashion critics. People that really wrote about fashion in a very critical way. And I think maybe in the future I need to make a video about my favorite fashion journalists. But the people that I consider were part of the golden era of fashion critics, people like Sarah Moa, people like Tim Blanks, Kathy Horin, Robin Givhan, Susie Menkes to some degree. And these are people that always voice their opinion. If they didn't like a collection, they would say they didn't like it. And I like that, because why I loved the way they used to write. You see, in fashion, people love to bash unobjectively. So people just be like, that's garbage, and no reason. And it's like, okay, how does that opinion hold any weight? But with people like Kathy Horin, they will tell you why it's bad. Like, someone like Robin Givhan will literally write a whole essay on why she doesn't like it and give you real reasons as to why she doesn't like it, talking about different garment details and how the designer has tied in the references to the collection and how they kind of missed the mark in doing that. And you really learn about some of this stuff. And I remember Robin Givhan wrote at Vogue, and these were the type of journalists that were at Vogue early days when I used to like read old issues of Vogue. So yeah, and essentially as time has gone on, people are starting to buy print magazines less. And the reason for this is obviously because of digital media and the internet, of course, because I think when Vogue first started, the only other place you could really learn anything about fashion really was through other people, which if you weren't working in the industry or you didn't have those connections, that was absolutely impossible. Or through TV, if there were like any fashion shows on TV, there was like no internet, like back in the 70s and stuff. So really, Vogue was like the Bible for everything fashion. And because it was made at a time when there was no internet and stuff, even when the internet came, because of the reputation it had built over the years, it kind of still had this sort of pull that people still saw it as like a very important fashion magazine to read if you're into fashion. But as time has gone on, slowly but surely, everyone has just really progressed away from reading Vogue. I mean, if you're gonna buy Vogue magazine, how much does it cost? What, $10? You might as well just invest a bit more and just get a subscription to like the Business of Fashion online, because they're producing constant content. The stuff comes out immediately. Like, you're gonna get all the new news. There's all a very good roster of journalists that write for BOF. So it's kind of like Vogue magazine is almost like redundant. Like, all the information that is ever gonna be in a Vogue magazine, you can find it anywhere else. And this is not just Vogue magazine, this is most print magazines. So a lot of them, like Elle, Harper's Bazaar, which kind of got axed to some extent, Vogue, like there's a big bunch of them that kind of the information that's in the magazines is starting to really become redundant. And I think another reason why a lot of these fashion magazines have lost their pizzazz and their, for lack of a better word, they're kind of like their spice, is because there's no balance in fashion journalism anymore, because it's so overly like commercialized. Like, I remember when I was reading, going back to the golden era of fashion journalists like the Tim Blanks and Kathy Horins and Sarah Moes of the world and the Robin Gavans, what made them really exciting to me was that apart from writing about the well-established famous designers, the Schiaparellis, the Diors, the Margielas, all of that, they also had this obsession with finding the new and being infatuated with the new. And in other words, they would seek out who are the new creatives coming up in the scene, and they would almost like kind of spearhead people's careers by writing about these up and coming creatives in the scene that have now become big things now. And I think fashion journalism now completely misses that, like out the window. Now fashion journalism, especially in print magazines, is all about people telling journalists, we want the biggest story, we want to get the most clicks, we want the most engagement. And when you're consciously trying to do something for numbers, it will always be watered down. It's why on my channel I could care less about views, because when I start caring about views, I'm gonna make the same type of content. That's why one day I'll make a Telfar bag video, the next day I'm making a video about fashion magazines, the next day I'll review a CSM graduate show. And I feel like they just kind of lost the passion. There's not really any passion when I read those magazines. I don't learn anything from those magazines anymore. And I feel like millennials and Gen Zers that they so wish to gain and grasp the attention of, I think they see through it. And I think that they know that Vogue is like a dying horse, and those people that they want to gain are kind of looking elsewhere to learn about fashion and to get their fashion information. A lot of print magazines have actually transitioned into making more online content. So you see, I don't want to bash Vogue, like this is not a Vogue hate video, but Vogue is, because the reason why I like to use Vogue as an example is because it's the biggest fashion magazine. So Vogue, they have a YouTube channel where they do there's some kind of like wacky ass content. It's like 73 questions and inviting celebrities to do their makeup and all that stuff. And from my estimations and from stuff I've read in the past, Vogue's YouTube channel runs at a loss, because based on the ad revenue they get, which is absolutely close to nothing compared to how much they invest in making the quality of the content look that way, they make a loss on their content. So they're kind of working backwards. And it's so weird. You'd think that Vogue is such a massive company with a huge marketing team and financial team. Like, I don't know why they're making such bad financial decisions, because how I see Vogue is like, it's a dying horse. The journalism is going down the drain, but not just Vogue, a lot of print magazines. And now they're trying to transition into digital content. And now the digital content is wacky, but I guess it relates to some people. It gets a lot of views because Vogue is big. And then what they do wrong is they're making a loss from it. So your print is already going down, and then the digital content you're also making a loss. And it almost seems like they're kind of just winging it and just trying to produce as much content as they can until hopefully one day their digital platform kind of takes over and it kind of starts to make them money. But that's not really a smart way to do business. And I think the direction Vogue is on, I won't be surprised if 20 years from now it goes bankrupt. Like, I really won't be surprised. And so in the modern day, I think the face of fashion journalism is completely changing. This is kind of why I want to be a fashion journalist so bad, because I feel like I want to recreate that golden, not saying that I'm ever going to be a good writer on the level of like a Robin Givhan. I intend to be, but my whole point is kind of just like transitioning fashion back into it being very serious and people talking about it in a very serious way, and in a way that is past just looking at it in a very superficial manner. And I think fashion has kind of been oversimplified by a lot of these print magazines. And just fashion journalism in general just needs to slow down. Like, this whole thing where fashion journalists have to review like 50 shows in the space of like 2 weeks. That's why the reviews are awful, because they barely even have time. I would rather they take their time. We don't need the reviews immediately. When you've seen all the shows, take it in, write notes. When you get home, write detailed reviews on these shows. This is what the type of stuff I really like, and the stuff we would like to read. Because telling us that the runway featured clogs, leather clogs, we can see that visually. That's a waste of like my time and everyone's time to read. And this is why there are some magazines doing some really, really good stuff. I mean, the best, I think the not really a magazine, but fashion company, fashion publication that is at the forefront, in my opinion, is The Business of Fashion, in the way their model is, like how you have to subscribe to read a lot of the stuff. And a lot of people are willing to pay for the subscription because of the value they're getting from like going through the paywall, for example. And I feel like they have the best kind of deal because they can do digital marketing, but at the same time people pay to be on the platform as well, which means people that you're going to get on the platform are serious. So then the journalists can write about more serious things. And because of that revenue, they rely less on what print magazines rely on, which is like print sales, which is already going down anyway. If anything, the BOF is probably going to earn more money as time goes, and it's going to grow as a business because more people are actually moving to digital means of gaining information. And then of course, there have always been some places with really good fashion journalism infrastructure, like the New York Times or the Washington Post. And I know Robin Givhan writes for the Washington Post. And the reason for this is because big newspapers aren't fashion publications, so they don't rely on like a brand deal specifically from a fashion brand like Prada to stay afloat. So because of that, the journalists have like more creative freedom to be a bit more truthful and kind of more direct with their delivery in terms of their writing style. And I love it. I absolutely love it. That's why I love reading New York Times. I love reading the Washington Post. And I think another publication that has really good digital content is Women's Wear Daily. On my laptop, because people always ask me how I know like what's going on in fashion, I have automatic tabs that open every time I launch my laptop. So it's Business of Fashion, Women's Wear Daily, New York Times, Washington Post, and a few other places. And Women's Wear Daily, time after time after time, the journalists there are doing an amazing job. They have really in-depth like reviews on everything, and they really take the time to make sure that they're really writing about the clothes. I think that's something that we've been missing in fashion journalism for a while now. Everyone's just talking about everything but the clothes, because like I said, it's like the passion is completely gone. And I feel like print magazines, the reason why there isn't much of a future for a lot of print magazines is because they're working the wrong way around. Like, so the Vogue business model is they rely on the prestige of their print magazine to uphold this idea that Vogue is like the pinnacle of fashion, which it isn't. In 2020 it isn't, let's be fair. But that's kind of what the average person perceives Vogue as, and it's because of the print magazine. It has this sort of prestige that comes with it. But the print magazine itself is selling less and less and less copies over the years. So they're now trying to see if they can transition to digital. And once they make a full transition to digital, the mystique of Vogue will be lost. That's for starters. And two, the digital content they're making, maybe not so much on like their web page, like Vogue Business, they have really good articles on Vogue Business. But on stuff like their YouTube channel, they make terrible losses for making content like that. And they're working the wrong way around. You're supposed to have an audience online and then use that audience online to market your print magazine, but instead they have a print magazine and they're kind of like trying to kind of market it online, and it's all over the place, and they're making a loss here and making a loss here, and their business model is just kind of, yeah, it's terrible. And on top of that, I think more than anything else, I think fashion has been democratized in recent times, and what that means is that a lot of people really want to feel like this sense of community when it comes to fashion. And so if you have this sense of community where people feel like they belong, then you're most likely going to appeal to a lot of Gen Zers and millennials. I almost feel like this is like a case study for Vogue to use. I hope not. I hope I'm not just giving them free game here. But yeah, essentially Vogue markets itself as like this higher than everyone else magazine, and it comes from elitism, and Vogue was built on elitism, and there's many issues with Vogue that I could get into as much as other print magazines. And this is kind of why I wanted to make this video, because I'm thinking, what exactly is the future of print magazines, and what is the longevity of them? Because I know me personally, I love to read things, tangible things. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I lose concentration very quickly if I'm reading an article on like a screen of a computer or a laptop or my phone, for example. I just can't concentrate. It's something about a screen, whereas if I buy a print magazine or a book, I can read the whole thing in like a day. So I still feel like there's definitely people like me that can't really focus on digital stuff and always will prefer kind of more tangible things. But to what extent on a wider scale is making print magazines kind of relevant? Because for example, I'm making a print magazine, the magazine I'm working on currently, but the thing about my magazine is I'm working the right way around. My main thing is my YouTube channel and now my website. So my main stuff is digital, and then I'm just using my digital platform to market my magazine. So I'm not paying anyone for advertisement or anything like that, like loads of print magazines do, for example. And it's sad, but it just seems like a lot of print magazines are extremely out of touch with what modern day consumers want to read and what they look for in magazines. And I think, unfortunately, there isn't too much of a future in terms of print magazine. And quite recently, I think it was about a few months ago, I was reading this article in the BOF where they were talking about how since the quarantine, a lot of companies have kind of withdrawn a lot of the money that they were spending on advertisements with a lot of these print magazines. And it has led a lot of print magazines to close because they could not afford to like keep up the infrastructure when they're not getting the millions or the hundreds of thousands in ad revenue from these different companies. And right here from the Business of Fashion, actually, I have a quote from the Digital Luxury Group Chief Executive called David. I don't want to butcher his surname, so I won't say his surname. And what he said was, "Nobody knows if luxury brands will go back to investing in print ads as much as before the pandemic. We're already seeing more flows into digital as it reduces costs. That's set to continue the more brands build up e-commerce. and as they seek more direct return and measurable results from media. And I totally agree with this statement, because reading that same article from the BOF, they were showing like numbers and talking about how these companies feel like the future is digital. So they're investing more in publications like The Business of Fashion, for example, and paying for more digital spots on websites rather than in print magazines. And they're kind of taking money away from print and then putting it all in digital, which is forcing the hand of a lot of magazines to then invest more in digital, which by chance is going to mean that there's less infrastructure and money going into the print side of things, which means it will always then just dwindle and be less. But yeah, that's kind of the end of my speech from the heart, I like to call it. Normally with these videos, I have a detailed script and I talk about the history of something, but today I kind of just wanted to open the discussion in the comments, and I want you guys to comment down below if you think print magazines don't have much of a future, and also actually what you think print magazines could do that would make you want to read it more, especially publications like Vogue, for example. But on that note, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like this video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel if you are new. If you want to support my channel financially, then you can support my channel by subscribing to my Patreon. The link to that is in the description below. And the guys that are on my Patreon know that I've been posting some pretty cool videos, and I have some really cool videos in the pipeline for Patreon. So also, if you're interested in like exclusive content via Patreon, then you can see that as a reason to subscribe. Also, my tote bags for my magazine are actually now live on my website. So if you guys want to pre-order my tote bags, I will really appreciate it. The link to that will also be in the description below. It's literally just my website, which is thefashionarchivemag.com. Essentially, it's kind of weird because I wanted the tote bags to start pre-orders the same time as the magazine, because the magazine itself won't be ready for another few weeks, but people just, I don't know why, just wanted to pre-order it. So I then had to unpassword the page and just left it open. So yeah, if you guys are interested in pre-ordering, everything's going to ship on the 20th of October. So yeah, so on that note, thank you very much for watching this video. I really appreciate everyone that watches these videos, and I'll be back with another video very soon.